What's the dumbest thing you've watched on Netflix? Probably The Package. It's a movie about this kid who cuts his dick off accidentally. They get him on a helicopter and the dick in an ice chest. But they give the wrong one to the paramedics. And then crazy stuff happens. Tall girl. For some reason the producers thought that being taller than the average girl makes you a freak. Also they made being tall her only personality trait. Death Note. And no, I don't mean the anime. I am talking about the movie. I love the anime, so the movie was extra disappointing. I am fine with things being changed for movie adaptations, but it takes things too far. It is all bad, and I hate it. This docuseries drama about history of pirates. Cool info, dumbass dramatizations, so much reused footage it could easily be a 45-min documentary, but I can't stop watching. There was an Onion article once that was like I'm too old to watch movies ironically. I feel that. If something is dumb, I turn it off and largely forget about it. I barely remember things I like. What was the name of Bill Nye's Netflix show? It was so awful, people seem to have completely forgot about it. MarriageOrMortgage.it's couples with around $30K in savings trying to decide whether to spend it on a wedding or on a down payment for a house. Some people actually choose wedding, why the fuck, and never have good reasons, like we want to spoil ourselves or we just wanted to show our love by getting married, completely ignoring the fact you can get legally married for less than $300. While on post-surgery painkillers, I chose a double feature of The Vouch followed by a comedy in which Kevin Spacey's consciousness is transferred to a cat and he must atone for his sins to switch back. It made me stupidly happy. That Cecil Hotel documentary, it was just a waste of time, and the series gives way too much time to the internet sleuths and conspiracy theorists. I don't know the name, but there was a guy tied to a bed with only his undies on, and about 4 women around him torturing and scaring the living crap out of him for at least 20 minutes. I'm pretty sure it was revenge for something, but we didn't watch long enough to find out. It was so fucking weird, cringy, and boring that we just couldn't take it anymore and turned it off. Can't stand movies with edgy shit in it, let alone cringy ones. Deadly Illusion. I couldn't even finish it because the acting was so bad and the storyline was absolute trash. Knock Knock. Keanu and 2 hot girls. What could go wrong? Everything. Literally the most illogical and stupid movie I've ever seen. Nicolas Cage showing his desperation for money. Sorry, I mean history of swear words, it's just so bad. 30 coins. The first episode was great, but the final had a kaiju for some fucking reason, and the priest shot it up with SMGs. This might not have been on Netflix, but fuck, it was dumb. There was some reality show about this guy who ran a second-hand store for ironically popular 80s and 90s clothes. Teens would come in and throw down hella money for brands like Starter and Champion, and on items that were counterfeit. Like, it wasn't fake stuff pushed as the real thing. It was part because it was fake. But like, the dude literally bought all the stuff from thrift stores just to mark it up to ridiculous prices. He did have some cool 80s and 90s memorabilia, but it was all just ridiculous, and he was pretty obnoxious. To all the boys I've loved, Before tried watching it because of all the hype, but the acting and everything in general was so bad I couldn't watch more than like 20 minutes. The Last Thing He Wanted. Seriously, worst ending to a film I've seen since Knowing, and that's a pretty high bar. Don't remember the title. Was supposed to be a thriller about some pandemic and a walled-off town and a girl that escaped it. Turned out to be just random shootings without any in-plot reasoning and with extreme amount of gore. Lost in Space. Starting to hate the trope of kid befriending a monster because of that show. Also, I hate how everyone's IQ dropped to 0 when Dr. Smith appears. I watched every episode of Kylo on Netflix. Id how I did it, or remember why I did it, but TBH it wasn't a good experience. Jiu-Jitsu, that new Nick Cage movie. Post-production is so bad that it's obvious they spent all their money on Cage and Jaw. Basically anything that's a Netflix original, there's a few diamonds in the rough, but most of it is just a fat chode and dog shit. I consider myself a weeboo who'll watch just about anything. But Netflix's Tower of God is honest to God one of the most boring anime I've ever seen. It's only 13 episodes, but it took me a week to get through it because I really didn't want to watch it. I just had to see if there was anything at the end that made it worth it. Without spoiling anything concrete, there isn't. It's a goddamn cliffhanger. Feels like only half of a season. That being said, there's some excitement about it because it's pretty much the first mainstream anime that's an adaptation of a Korean webtoon and not something from Japan. https://www.youtube.com/watch?v=xlqp7lbr3gy. There are quite a few interesting Korean comics that could really use an animated adaptation. According to that video, Tower of God really feels like a slow burn because it only adapts the first few chapters of a series that runs for hundreds of chapters. And apparently things don't get really exciting until the 100th chapter or so. Star TLDR, Tower of God S1 felt like Game of Thrones if it only adapted the Sansa chapters and the season ended during the off with his head scene. Gakudals. 3 Yakuza are forced by their boss to get gender-changing operations in order to start a J-pop group and become female idols. The Babysitter. It's that comedy horror film that had, like, a 15 minutes of fame moment in 2017. Because of how bad it was. It was neither scary nor funny, not even the way bad films can be, which means it failed in both halves of its genre. Bad film. The Godzilla anime. So GD boring.it's animated, so you'd think they'd use the opportunity to make some truly epic monster fights, but most of the time the monsters barely move. Tower of God. They adapted the beginning of a source material that's hundreds of chapters long and supposedly doesn't get really intense until around 100 chapters in. The result is 13 episodes that are quite boring. Sorry to bother you. Oh my god, I'd been seeing it advertised for so long and I thought it looked really funny. BF and I finally sit down and watch it, and what the fuck. I don't mean to spoil it, but it ends with giant horse people with giant horse whiners. 0-10 don't recommend. We were in stunned silence after that movie ended. Years ago my friends and I used to pick the worst rated movies we could find when we were real tired and just laugh at how bad they were. My favorite of those was a movie called Zombie Ass. Terrible but so bad you can't look away. I don't remember what it was about, but it was about 2 guys growing and selling magical weed. I actually did kind of enjoy it, even if it wasn't the best movie. Dweegans and leprechauns. Just make sure you're intoxicated or you won't last 2 minutes. But if you hang on through the nearly 2-hour runtime you will be rewarded with a fever dream of the worst animation, writing, and voice acting to ever come together under one production. We Can Be Heroes. I watched it because I grew up with Shark Boy and Lava Girl. That one was way much better. I generally prefer to do my dumb movie watching on Shudder. Thank you. And most recently, Psycho Gorman takes the cake. Skins, and not the series some of us know and love. I'm talking about a movie not in English and it is just wow, if you've seen it you know. Polar. The best way to summarize that movie is a horny 14-year-old boy tried to write his own version of James Bond. I don't know if any movie made me cringe more than that one. Visually, Midnight Gospel. Reminds me of Super Jail. It's about a dude who DJs a station. He gets catapulted into different worlds to host interviews, meanwhile the most random and crazy things happen. Ida chaos in cartoon form while the interview takes place. The topics they talk about are interesting though. Behind the Curve, a documentary on flat earthers out there. The test experiment the guy did to prove flat earth failed in the documentary itself. I don't know if it's still on there, but I watched an aquarium background, a la the fireplace, for way too long. I care a lot. The premise of young con artist meets her match and an elderly woman she attempts to lock away and bleed dry of money sounded really cool. Then the Russian mob led by Peter Dinklage got involved and things just generally went downhill from there. Awful movie. Awful main character. Years ago, I watched a movie named Rubber. It was about a tire that came to life and had psychokinetic powers that it used to kill people. There's an anime called Food Worst premise is that there's a bunch of 14-year-old kids who attend a cooking school that will expel you if you fail a class. On top of that, they have live cooking battles in giant stadiums to see who can cook better. Every time someone cooks well, people have a foodgasm. Brace yourself. It made me want to cook something, but it was really campy and weird. Had a girlfriend, so I had to watch Riverdale and Pretty Little Liars. Both complete trash. Being single and jerking off shitty TV series. This movie about these skiers that get trapped on a ski lift overnight and there are like wolves running around a ski resort apparently. Skylanders Academy. I watched it because I grew up playing the games on our Wii. To this day I don't know if I hated it or loved it. Skins. Why the butthole face? The other ministries are somewhat understandable and legit in a way, but never in my life have I seen or heard about anyone with a butt for a mouth. And why for God's sake did she put lipstick on her lips on her other end?